In 1886, an injured Civil War veteran stumbled upon a recipe that would conquer the world. He was a morphine addict looking for a cure, and he ended up creating Coca-Cola. A few years later, a rival pharmacist made a brazen move. He tweaked that secret recipe just enough to call it his own. The result was Pepsi Cola, and it ignited a cola war so cutthroat it would span a century. How do you steal a formula kept in a vault? And what if a single teaspoon-sized tweak started the most expensive brand war in history? Atlanta, 1886. A Confederate veteran named Dr. John Pemberton is stirring a bubbling brew in a brass kettle behind his house. He's desperate. A saber wound from the Civil War left him addicted to morphine, and he's trying to invent a cure, a nerve tonic, that might ease his pain and make him rich. Little does he know he's about to create an American icon. Pemberton's concoction blends exotic ingredients, coca leaf extract, yes, cocaine in a small dose, and West African kola nut for caffeine. He adds sugar instead of wine because Atlanta has gone dry under temperance laws. The result is a thick caramel-colored syrup, bittersweet and invigorating. He carries a jug of it down to Jacob's Pharmacy, where curious customers try the new drink mixed with fizzy water. It works. Pemberton's Brain Tonic is an instant hit, touted to cure headaches, relieve exhaustion, and calm nerves. His bookkeeper, Frank Robinson, names it Coca-Cola, scribbling the flowing logo that will soon become world famous. Early Coca-Cola advertisements sold the drink as a cure-all and a delight. Delicious, refreshing, exhilarating, all for 5 cents a glass. In the late 1880s, Coke wasn't just a beverage. It was marketed as medicine and magic in a bottle. Ladies and gentlemen in fancy clothes sipped it in drugstore soda fountains, believing this new elixir could soothe their nerves and brighten their mood. The secret formula quickly became the company's most prized asset, whispered about but closely guarded. And as demand grew, Pemberton struggled to keep control of his creation. But success is a double-edged sword. Pemberton, still in pain and nearly bankrupt, starts selling off pieces of his business to stay afloat. He suspects his formula could be a national drink someday, so he desperately tries to retain a share for his only son. It's no use. Crippled by debt and addiction, Pemberton ends up handing over the remaining Coca-Cola rights for just $300 to a savvy Atlanta businessman, Asa Candler, in 1888. The inventor of Coca-Cola dies impoverished and addicted shortly after Chas, never seeing the empire his syrup would spawn. As John Pemberton fades into history, his secret formula lives on, and it's now in new hands. But he isn't the only pharmacist with big dreams and a taste for cola. Someone else has been watching, ready to brew a copycat concoction and steal Pemberton's potion for himself. While Coca-Cola was taking its first fizzing breaths in Atlanta, a young pharmacist in New Bern, North Carolina, was concocting his own miracle drink. Caleb Bradham had seen the craze for Coca-Cola's medicinal elixir and decided, why not him? In 1893, Bradham stood behind the counter of his small drugstore, mixing up a blend of sugar, water, caramel, lemon oil, nutmeg, and cola nut in his soda fountain. He called it Brad's drink. Customers loved it. The sweet, spicy cola tonic was a hit in his town, offering a pleasant pick-me-up and even aiding digestion. Sensing he had something special, Bradham gave his brew a snappier name. Pepsi Cola, a play on the word dyspepsia, meaning indigestion. He marketed Pepsi Cola as a healthful digestive aid, touting the slogan, exhilarating, invigorating, aids digestion. It was basically a copy of Coca-Cola's pitch. By 1903, Bradham trademarked the name and was shipping Pepsi syrup to pharmacies across North Carolina. By 1910, Pepsi Cola franchises popped up in 24 states, and the drink was gaining a foothold. It seemed the imitator might grow into a legitimate rival. Coca-Cola now had a challenger nipping at its heels. For a moment, Pepsi Cola flourished. Bradham was hailed as the successful Southern pharmacist who'd cracked Coca-Cola's secret, or at least reinvented it under a new name. Pepsi and Coke both leaned into health claims and catchy ads, each claiming to be the finest cola tonic. But then, disaster struck. World War I sent sugar prices skyrocketing, threatening Bradham's business. Believing sugar would only get more expensive, Bradham made a fateful gamble. He bought a fortune's worth of sugar, stockpiling it for the long haul. When peace came, sugar prices plummeted instead. Bradham was left with a warehouse of overpriced sugar and a cola he could no longer afford to produce. In 1923, Pepsi Cola went bankrupt. The dream was dead. Bradham lost his company, and his beloved Pepsi formula was sold off to creditors for pennies. It looked like Coca-Cola had triumphed. Their pesky imitator had shot itself in the foot with a sugar gamble gone wrong. For Coca-Cola, the war seemed over before it truly began, or so it appeared. Yet the Pepsi-Cola story was far from finished. A few years later, in the midst of the Great Depression, Pepsi would rise from the ashes under new ownership, leaner, meaner, and out for revenge. The stage was set for a cola war, and Coke had no idea what was coming next. 1920s, New York City. Enter Charles Guth, president of a candy company called Loft, Inc. In 1931, Guth acquired the busted Pepsi Cola brand at a bargain, almost as an act of spite. Legend has it that Guth tried to strike a syrup deal with Coca-Cola for his chain of stores, but Coke's executives refused to cut him a break. Stung by Coke's arrogance, Guth decided to resuscitate Pepsi and make Coca-Cola regret the day they snubbed him. It wasn't easy. Early on, Guth's Pepsi stumbled along, nearly bankrupt again. He even offered to sell Pepsi's formula to Coca-Cola in desperation, but the Coke leadership laughed it off, assuming Pepsi would disappear on its own. That was a big mistake. Facing ruin, Guth tried one last radical experiment. He took the typical 6-ounce bottle of cola, doubled it to 12 ounces, and sold it for the same price, just 5 cents. Twice as much for a nickel became Pepsi's rallying cry, blaring from radios in one of the first nationwide jingles. During the dark days of the Depression, this was music to cash-strapped consumers' ears. Why pay a nickel for a small Coke when you could get double the Pepsi for the same price? It worked. Almost overnight, Pepsi Cola went from bankruptcy to profitability. Families struggling through the 1930s embraced the bargain. The catchy Pepsi jingle, "Pepsi Cola hits the spot, 12 full ounces, that's a lot," became the earworm of a generation. By the end of the 1930s, Pepsi was alive and kicking, gnawing at Coca-Cola's market share. The underdog had some bite. Coca-Cola, of course, didn't roll over. In those years, Coke cemented itself as an all-American symbol. During World War II, Coke made sure American GIs could get an ice-cold Coca-Cola for 5C wherever they went. A genius move that built unparalleled brand loyalty. Pepsi, meanwhile, scrambled just to keep its sugar supply flowing and its doors open. Even as Pepsi grew, it was still seen as the distant second, even a poor man's drink for those who couldn't afford the real thing. So Pepsi changed tactics. In the 1950s and 60s, the scrappy challenger reinvented itself. No longer would it play second fiddle or bargain bin alternative. Pepsi would become the choice of the new generation. The company hired celebrity endorsers like movie star Joan Crawford, who happened to marry Pepsi's president, to glam up its image. Pepsi started courting young people, as well as consumers overlooked by Coke's traditional marketing. Slogans like, "Now it's Pepsi for those who think young," and "Come alive. You're in the Pepsi generation," targeted the youth and the young at heart. Pepsi was selling more than a drink. It was selling a lifestyle of energy, change, and modernity. By the late 1970s, this once failing brand was a rising force. It even made headlines by becoming the first American cola sold in the Soviet Union in 1974. After decades of playing David to Coca-Cola's Goliath, Pepsi had forced a stalemate. The rivalry was out in the open. Two giants neck and neck, each plotting their next move. The cola wars had truly begun, and both sides were gearing up for a battle that would make marketing history. Pepsi was about to make a provocative challenge that would shake Coke's confidence to the core and push Coca-Cola into an unprecedented crisis. By the 1980s, Coke and Pepsi were entrenched in a full-scale marketing war. In small towns and big cities alike, Coca-Cola and Pepsi signs hung side by side, a visible truce in a war that raged behind the scenes. They bombarded the airwaves with dueling commercials, Coca-Cola had nostalgic Americana and iconic ads. Who doesn't remember I'd like to buy the world a Coke? While Pepsi countered with rock stars, smiling teens, and the slogan, the choice of a new generation. Both brands spent fortunes to outshine each other at every turn. But Pepsi had a trick up its sleeve. A simple blind taste test that would deeply rattle Coca-Cola's empire. In 1975, Pepsi launched the Pepsi Challenge. Pepsi reps set up tables in shopping malls and fairgrounds, offering people 2 unmarked cups, one with Pepsi, one with Coke. Sip, compare, pick your favorite. To Coke's shock, a majority of tasters chose the sweeter, more citrusy flavor of Pepsi. The results were splashed across TV ads. Ordinary people, astonished to learn they preferred Pepsi over Coke. It was bold, controversial, and it was working. Inside Coca-Cola's headquarters, alarm bells went off. When Coke ran its own secret taste tests, the data was just as dire. Even loyal Coke drinkers were choosing Pepsi in blind comparisons. The Pepsi Challenge was a PR masterstroke that made Coca-Cola look vulnerable for the first time in memory. By 1984, Pepsi's confidence was sky high. It had signed Michael Jackson, the biggest pop star on the planet, to an exclusive endorsement deal, and its new generation ads were the height of cool. Pepsi was chipping away at Coke's lead, especially among younger consumers and in supermarkets. Coca-Cola, though still the top-selling soda overall, was losing its shine. The company that once never questioned itself was suddenly full of doubt. And so, Coca-Cola made a decision that shocked everyone. It would tamper with its sacred formula. On April 23, 1985, Coca-Cola stunned the world by announcing it was changing its 99-year-old recipe. CEO Roberto Goizueta unveiled New Coke, a reformulated version of Coke that was smoother and sweeter. Essentially, it tasted more like Pepsi. For the first time since 1886, the original Coca-Cola flavor was being retired. Executives even took the cherished secret Formula 7X and locked it away in a vault, intending that it never see the light of day again. Some may choose to call this the boldest marketing move in history, Goizueta declared confidently. Pepsi could hardly contain its glee. Pepsi's CEO told reporters, "After 87 years of going at it eyeball to eyeball, the other guy just blinked." Pepsi even gave its employees the day off to celebrate Coca-Cola's apparent surrender. For Coca-Cola's top brass, New Coke was supposed to be a masterstroke. Instead, all hell broke loose. The backlash from loyal Coke drinkers was swift and ferocious. Phone lines at Coca-Cola headquarters lit up with thousands of angry calls a day. Protest groups formed, demanding the return of old Coke. Shoppers began hoarding any remaining cans of the original formula. It turned out people didn't want a new taste. They wanted the Coke they grew up with. "I don't think I'd be more upset if you burned the flag in my front yard," one disgruntled American wrote to the company. Coca-Cola was stunned. They had expected some grumbling. Instead, they got a national revolt. New Coke became one of the biggest flops in marketing history. Pepsi reveled in the moment, watching its rival make a colossal misstep. Coca-Cola had effectively killed off Coca-Cola, handing Pepsi a symbolic victory it could never have achieved on its own. Or so it seemed. In truth, the New Coke fiasco was about to teach everyone a lesson in loyalty and hubris. The stage was set for one of the biggest corporate turnabouts in history. Coca-Cola's executives sat stunned as the backlash to New Coke raged on. It had taken 99 years to build Coke's mystique, and just weeks to shatter it. By July 1985, a mere 79 days after New Coke's launch, Coca-Cola caved. The company announced it would bring back the original formula as Coca-Cola Classic. The news was met with cheers. Consumers rushed out to buy the old Coke, relieved to have their beloved drink restored. New Coke, meanwhile, was relegated to a footnote, a corporate embarrassment that would soon vanish from shelves. In an epic irony, Coca-Cola's worst mistake had triggered an outpouring of affection for the real Coke, strengthening the brand in the long run. Still, Pepsi milked the moment for all it was worth. Its ads took credit for forcing Coke's hand, and Pepsi's president joked that he'd never seen so many people so happy to get their old Coke back. The cola wars raged on into the 1990s. New ads, new products, countless jabs traded back and forth. But both companies had learned something. They had pushed each other to extremes, and each had scars to show for it. There was a grudging respect now between the two cola titans, even as the competition continued worldwide. Fast forward to 2006. The cola wars were supposedly long over, or at least simmering down, when a real-life spy story ignited a new scandal. In July of that year, FBI agents in Atlanta watched as a Coca-Cola employee handed over a bag containing confidential documents and a mysterious vial to someone she believed was a Pepsi exec. It was a $1.5 million deal, Coke's secret formula for sale. The employee, Joya Williams, had stolen Coca-Cola's new product plans and even a sample of a new drink in development. Her plan was to sell Coke's secrets to Pepsi and cash out. But Pepsi didn't bite. Instead, Pepsi blew the whistle and alerted Coca-Cola and federal agents. In an undercover sting, the FBI caught Williams red-handed. "Trade secrets are important to everybody," a prosecutor said gratefully, praising Pepsi for its honesty. The thieves were hauled off in handcuffs, and the priceless Coke formula remained safely under lock and key. In the end, Pepsi chose integrity over an easy leg up, a far cry from the cutthroat tactics of earlier cola wars. Even amid fierce competition, there were lines neither company would cross. After all these twists and turns, neither cola giant could ever truly defeat the other. Their century-long conflict simply evolved, with both sides still standing. The cola wars were not ending. If anything, they were gearing up for the next round. More than a century later, Coca-Cola and Pepsi remain locked in an endless war. Two legendary formulas, two global empires, and no clear winner. As long as there's Coke and Pepsi, the battle continues and one question endures. Which soda truly reigns supreme?